Show Times, what's up? It's your boy, 3K. Still out here in this open field with this lovely, lovely black cap. Oh, it's so comfy. Just comfy enough to get started with the big board series. Now, we're going to start with quarterback. I know that's not the most important position for the Rams, but that's how the draft's going to start. It's still the most important position in the league. Now, when I break down these tiers, essentially what I'm looking at is a first tier is somebody that, for quarterbacks at least, that first tier is going to be somebody that you want, that you're going to need to plug in from week one. So when you talk about, and let's go ahead and tease it, Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III, those are guys that you're looking at that are likely going to be starters through the preseason going into week one, unless there's some crazy free agent signing or one of them gets hurt. When we talk about the second tier, these are guys that may not start week one, but you can have some confidence that should the need arise, if the starter is not playing well, if the starter goes down to injury after a couple weeks, whatever the case is, the fan base starts getting animated and similar to what happened with Tebow last season, you can plug these guys in and have some confidence that they'll be able to be somewhat successful, at least when they get in the game. The third tier is guys that start to bridge that gap between starters and almost career backups. These are guys that aren't going to start, aren't going to really push for a starting job, but are there with a capability should the need arise. Guys like Colin Kaepernick at the 49ers last year. There's nothing to expect that these guys are going to get much time in year one, but there's a ceiling, there's potential there that perhaps they could be starters down the road, and if the situation arises, maybe they can plug in some game time in year one. The fourth tier is where you're really getting into the backup range. Fourth tier are these guys that you know they're going to sit. There's some potential there, but is it worth it to deal with that if a guy is already playing well on the team? A lot of it's going to be situational. Maybe you take a guy from that fourth tier when you have a fading starter and you're not sure whether he's going to be the guy, and maybe in year two you give one of these prospects a shot. Tier 5, you're really talking about backups, career backups, and there's not too many of those. You get to the end of the draft, sometimes you pull a Tom Brady. Sometimes you get one of those guys late on day 3, undrafted free agent who works out. But the reality is foresight is 0-0 and hindsight's 20-20. I don't do math well. No surprises in the first tier. I've got Andrew Luck, number 1 overall, followed by Robert Griffin III. That's my top tier. There's a reason they're likely going 1 and 2. Getting into the second tier, I've got Nick Foles at 3rd overall, followed by Brandon Weeden, then Kirk Cousins and Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill may have the highest ceiling, but in terms of what I've seen from him, he isn't as consistent. He hasn't shown that consistency. To be fair, a lot of that is wide receiver play. Jeff Fuller just didn't really maximize his potential, given what he did in 2010. But I just don't feel comfortable putting him up above those other 3, given what I've seen on tape, and my man love for Foles has been well documented. This is a suitable for work video, by the way, in case you're wondering where we're going with this. One note that I am going to reference at the end is height. You'll notice that everybody in my second tier is somewhere between 6'3" and 6'5". I'm not trying to overplay the height issue, but it's not a coincidence that those guys are those height. And when we get to the 5th tier, I'll talk about that. 3rd tier, I've got Ryan Lindley from San Diego State, followed by Brock Osweiler from Arizona State. Like I said before, with that 3rd tier, you've got some potential for starters there, but have they shown you everything that you want to be confident that they can come in early on in year one? I haven't from either of those guys. Now, Osweiler's incredibly tall, and Lindley's got a strong touch on the ball. It's going to be interesting to see what teams they go to and how they end up working into that positional depth chart. Tier 4, I've got Russell Wilson at 9 overall now. He measured in at under 6 feet, but what we saw at North Carolina State and Wisconsin is somebody who can manage an offense. He can manage an offense. He doesn't have the strongest arm. He doesn't have the best accuracy. He's not the fastest quarterback, but he's got enough of those capabilities that you can be confident taking him maybe early day 3, getting into that 4th round, that there's an opportunity there to have an experienced college prospect who can come in and be a capable quarterback if the need arises. Now, you don't necessarily want that need to arise, but there's a reason he's a day 3 guy. After Russell Wilson, I've got B.J. Coleman from Tennessee Chattanooga, and then at 11 overall, I've got Case Keenum from Houston. A little bit of a system change coming to the NFL depending on where he goes, but that's going to be an interesting prospect to watch how his career starts off. In the 5th tier, I start off with G.J. Kinney out of Tulsa, followed by Austin Davis from Southern Mississippi. I've got Kellen Moore, the Boise State prospect everybody loves to hate to love, at 14, followed by Chandler Harnish from Northern Illinois. Now, I mentioned that I was going to discuss height. As opposed to that 2nd tier where everybody's between 6'3" and 6'5", here in this 5th tier, everybody's between 6 foot and 6'2". Obviously, Kellen Moore being the shortest. So that's going to start us off for the big boards, Turf Show Times. You know what to do. Subscribe with us, SBN, Turf Show Times. Obviously, as we get through this, there are going to be some positions of more importance. Both of the two. I'm importing importance into this. You heard? Stay Stick with us. Turf Show Times, SBN Turf Show Times. Do what you do. Holla.